You know what time of the week it is. In this video, I'll continue analyzing your guys' gameplay as I analyze Nerd's perspective in a 6v6 between Nerd Prom and Rosa. This is the first time I'll be analyzing an inward player, so I'm not going to focus too much on the driving as I don't have much inward experience, rather going head on into decision making. And as always, if you want me to analyze your perspective, check out the submission process in the description, then join my Discord server, also in the description, and or DM me. But without further ado, let's start giving her, bud. Just before getting started, if you enjoy this video, consider subscribing. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind. Starting things off, we got Wario Stadium. For most of the race, Nerd finds himself to be in the front. I think he naturally played pretty decently, outside of some sloppy driving here and there, but there are a few things to talk about nonetheless. And as always, when I say you, I'm most likely referring to Nerd. Alright, Nerd, this may seem a wee bit obvious, but considering you tricked off both ramps here on all 3 laps, I think this is pretty important to mention. Even on inward, drifting off the ramps is significantly faster. I know you didn't lose out on too much here as you were still able to maintain a top spot, but you have to remember that driving mistakes like this can add up over time, as I feel like your general driving, at least on this track, can definitely be improved. Whenever you go into the time trial lab, I'd recommend putting more emphasis on learning how to drive Wario Stadium in particular. This is one of, if not the most technical track in the game, and mastering this track will give you a very good handle of the driving aspect of the game. So, I have mixed emotions about this part of the race. First and foremost, great job on staying tight enough to sneak past the bomb without it exploding on you. While that's cool and all, there's a really good chance you wouldn't have had to worry about that to begin with. Like I mentioned earlier, driving mistakes, both big and small, can add up very quickly. I won't go into too much detail here, just try to refine your driving here, and you'll be given her full throttle. Anyway, I fully agree with your intentions to try and take the guy out of first. I couldn't hear your end in the call, so I'll just assume you knew your teammate was in third. Unfortunately, you limited the chances of your green landing once you threw it. You threw it where the guy in first was instead of predicting where he might eventually be, which was to the right when he swerved. You should have thrown your green to the right or even to the left so it bounces off the wall, as that would make your forward green much less predictable and much harder to avoid. When you threw it, it was already well ahead of the guy, and while it was close to hitting him before it broke, I think had you recalculated your approach, you could have had a much better chance at hitting him. This isn't the best example, as greens break pretty quickly in versus race, but for the first few bounces, yeah, it's pretty good. Just remember to protect yourself and you'll be good to go. Now, I do think it was a solid idea to snag first when you had the chance, especially considering the guy who was previously in first took a first place box, so they were limited in what they could take you out with right off the bat. However, in general, I feel like you should have been using your rear view more often here. To put it into perspective, for as long as you were in first, you did not check your rear view until you tricked off the anti-gravity ramp. If the guy behind you pulled a green, they very easily could have caught you off guard and taken you out. So next time, try to use your rear view a bit more often, at the very least when you're driving straight. Regardless, it didn't matter as the guy got taken out and you were able to secure an easy first place. Again, try to refine your driving a wee bit. Your driving on the last turn could be improved quite a lot, but improvement is always a good thing, so keep your head up. Next up, we have Neo Bowser City. I think Nerd plays this race decently, and considering this track is already disadvantageous for inwards, we'll cut him some slack if there are any driving mistakes, namely on the S-turn. Anyway, you could tell he was being a good teammate here, but I think there are still a few things he could have done differently here to benefit him. First of all, I can really appreciate that you didn't mindlessly throw your bomb forward only because you saw a few RS members in front of you. That could have been a loss for your team had you not taken a calculated approach, but not throwing it forward was a solid idea as well. But I'm bringing this up because you have 2 items that you can't really do much with given your situation, especially considering you found yourself next to some of your teammates. You had a lot of space on the final straight, so you could have swerved to the right and backed everything, then you would have next to no chance of hitting your teammates. But you live and learn. Try that out whenever you get the chance. If you don't like your offensive items, get rid of them in a wide line. Simply put, I think you exposed your Crazy 8 quite early. It was really good that you held it, obviously, as your team soon pulled shock. But I say this because there were quite a few scenarios where you were very close to your opponents. They could have ran into your bomb, or even worse, taken your star. There's also the possibility of your Crazy 8 getting stolen by a ghost, but you were already in a bottom spot, so it wasn't super likely. You did a solid job maneuvering around your opponents for sure, but it would have been better had you held the last shroom of your triples at least for a bit longer. I think when your bomb blew up, that was the closest you were to getting your star taken from you. So next time, just be a bit more careful. This was a little unfortunate, but I still feel like you could have avoided this. When you dodged, you spammed 2 of your triple mushrooms as well. This may not seem like much at first, but had you just pressed the item button 3 times to get your star out guaranteed, even if you got starred by your teammate, you could have recovered directly afterwards. You could have even avoided getting starred completely, as you could have shroomed again after the shortcut. The point is, triple shrooms are very precious in this scenario, and wasting some of them as you did can be what determines what spot you get, as it did here. That's just something to keep in mind for the future though. Next time you have a Crazy 8, and more specifically only a few items left including the star, be aware of how many times you need to press the item button at most to activate your star. It could save you from wasting your pocket item. Lastly, we have Ice Outpost. I think out of the 3 races showcased, Nerd probably plays the cleanest in this race, but as you should expect, we still got a few things to talk about here. As always, the JPGivin'er analysis is all about accountability, learning, and improving. Alright, Nerd, I respect the effort to take both shortcuts despite your suboptimal alignment without a doubt. However, I think you should have been fully aware that you had a very slim chance at making the second shortcut after nailing the first one. The second cut is one of those where if you aren't comfortable taking it as you land, you should never take it to begin with. This may not seem like much, but you were a top spot for Nerd Prom, and due to your own mistake, you fell to the back. Front presence is super important in this game, so do not take it for granted. I know this for a fact, as I used to always get bumped off when going for the first 3 coins on Piranha Plant Slide. It can be a big deal in some situations. Clearly, getting hit by the build didn't mean a whole lot because you changed your star pretty much immediately afterwards. But what if this was in a situation where you actively didn't want to get billed? Let's say you didn't in this scenario. I think you should have been using your rear view a lot more often, or at the very least once the bill warning was on your screen, just to have an idea of where it was while having way more than enough time to work around it. Again, maybe you just didn't care in this scenario, which is fine as the bill didn't affect you that much. But in a scenario where it would hurt your race, your cue to put more emphasis on your rear view would either be when you get the bill warning or as it's close behind you on the minimap. I mentioned the minimap as sometimes this game doesn't give you warnings when it should, but just keep that in mind for next time and you should be good to go. Again, it's very clear that this accidental red didn't mean much to your team. And even if you did hit your teammate, he very likely would have finished in 3rd or 4th regardless. However, you could have been punished for tossing up this red as well. You guys finished top 3 in this race, so what if your opponent pulled a red behind you and connected before you crossed the finish line? And if you hit your teammate as well, your opponent certainly could have capitalized on your mistake. At the end of the day, this mistake didn't mean much as we can see here, but again, you gotta think about this in other scenarios as it could come back to bite you down the line. That's the general theme of this video though, making plays that didn't punish you in the moment but could down the line. Just be aware of that moving forward and you'll turn out just fine. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And for Nerd, while I didn't put too much emphasis on what you did right, I still think you played decently and showed signs that you can improve. Just take what I told you in this video, like refining your Wario Stadium driving, using your rear view more often, and not mashing your item button when you don't have to, and you'll be well on your way to leveling up. I wish you the best of luck moving forward. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and keep on giving her, bud.